Welcome to episode 50 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Roy. Roy just made a funny face. Sounds like the beginning of the recording's going poorly.
Yeah,
Roy, how are you?
I'm well. As soon as I hit record, it immediately popped up saying, we cannot find your video or something like that. But it seems to have gone away and be fine now.
I can see you.
That's good. I'm well. I have not had a large meal. I am recording prior to a large. I love how that's just the beginning of every episode now.
I know, but I'm thinking of a new listener going, okay, the first thing he says is, I have not just eaten a large meal. Like, what is going on?
Listening to this Two Bored Apes, episode 50, a very special episode.
Very special.
We're going to hear about some news of the week and some art blocks and some cutting edge. No, not cutting edge. What's the other thing?
I have no
what's
idea
the thing
what you're talking about.
When news is like really fresh?
Breaking news?
Breaking news. Yeah, some breaking news. And but first of all,
extra, read all about it. That
must
was
get to our meals. Yeah.
Do you know where that comes
just
from,
did
by the
have a
way?
meal.
Do you know
Extra,
where that
extra.
comes
It was a war cry at my primary school. Extra, read all
Well,
about it.
they would
We're
have
from
like the
Cook, and
daily
there's no doubt
paper.
about it. We're mean and
They
we're
would have-
green and we're
all
rough
right,
and we're
enough,
tough. Now
enough.
come on, Cook. Let's do our
Nobody
stuff.
wants to hear your school.
There might be one person
So,
listening
okay.
that went to the same school. All
It
right.
might be. No, but they'd have the daily newspaper, but then if something awesome happened, they would print an extra one every day.
Right.
Extra, read all about it.
I think I did know that. It was in an episode
That
of The
makes
Simpsons
sense.
or something. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about NFTs or? do
Yeah.
you want,
Let's get into news. Well, I mean, you did
Okay.
have a meal, but let's not get into that. Let's get into news.
We
of the
don't
week.
need to talk about what I just had for lunch.
All right. News of the week.
News of the week. You want to start with the bad one, or the community has received a bad one, but not necessarily a bad one?
Let's start with the bad one first, and then because I think that'll
Okay.
be shorter. The
There
Solana.
wa-
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. The Solana hack exploit thing that occurred 4 days ago, I think, where
About
a
there.
bunch of people's
By the way, it's
phantom wallets.
the 6th of August now, so that would have been the 2nd
Right.
of August we're talking about.
A lot of people's Solana wallets were having just all of their assets drained. I think it might have been just tokens, like ERC20 tokens, or not ERC20 on Solana, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're equivalent.
Sol, and not NFTs. I'm not positive. And there was a lot of panic for like 24 hours where people weren't exactly sure what the root cause of it was. Was it something on the Solana core code level? Was it something to do with Phantom Wallet? Because that's a wallet that everyone uses. Yeah.
So what was happening specifically a little bit was that people were having transactions that their wallet was signing, even though so that was just a specific thing that people were trying to latch on to figure out exactly what was happening. And then do you want to get into what we found out in the interim, or do you not really know?
It was
one wallet basically.
It was Slope.finance, this protocol.
Slope, that's what it's called.
Yeah, which they had. So yeah, like you said,
so stupid.
People's wallets were signing transactions. So effectively, the attacker was able to get people's private keys, and then once you have their private keys, you can sign transactions and do whatever you want.
Not your keys, not your coins.
Exactly. Slope.finance is a protocol which I don't 100% know exactly what they did. It's like a wallet. It's like an exchange. It's a bunch of things, I think.
I only knew it as a wallet.
Yeah.
But I haven't paid a close attention other than to the huge fuck up that they did that led to this.
Yeah. They, I believe, said explicitly on their website and other places, we don't store your private keys or anything like that. And I believe that was their intention, but they... in their code, there was like a section where they sort of need to use your private keys for a second, and then ordinarily they would scrub it and delete it from and that part was forgotten or like overlooked, or there was some sort of bug.
It was unencrypted, and it was like accessible via an API or something like that.
Something
it was
insane. Yeah,
unencrypted specifically. I remember seeing.
Yeah.
The part about whether they were supposed to delete it immediately, I don't know about that, but I thought it was just a thing where it was supposed to definitely be encrypted and something. It was like the label for it was private keys and it was unencrypted, so it was doubly obvious.
Yeah. So that's
and then just stored on some sort of public cloud or accessible via API that somebody found. And I think they were only able to steal like $6 million because Slope was not super popular.
Yeah, I heard it was up at like 10 million, but I mean, if you compare it to like some of these bridge exploits or larger scale things, there's like hundreds of millions. It's on the smaller scale, but obviously it still sucks. And I think a lot of retail got hit more than anything. Yeah.
But price of Solana went down very little,
Yeah,
which surprised a lot of people, myself included.
yeah. I
But
think
I mean, the coins like to trade in lockstep so much these days. But you would think that would be a big enough thing to really make it underperform by at least 10% for the day or something. But it just didn't.
to be fair, this is like the 12th time something bad has happened to Solana. Like the network's
Solana
gone
just
down,
shuts
and
down.
yeah,
It stops functioning.
there
And the
were
price goes down 1.5%.
when all of it was happening, people were like, "Oh, just calling for Solana to like stop the blockchain." And
Yeah.
the crazy thing is, they can do that. It's so
Yeah.
centralized that if they want, they can like, all right, we're just going to freeze the blockchain for a while and that. Yes, that's just silly. So
It is.
yeah, I think
I'm glad that I sold mine months ago.
I sold most of mine. I still have some. I checked I had like a little bit in a Phantom wallet as it was going on, and then I basically just like shrugged my shoulders and was like, I'm like, at this point, so many wallets have been drained. Oh, another thing.
Yeah.
With like, because of how fast transactions are on Solana, when an exploit like this happens, they can drain thousands of wallets, very, very, very quickly. Whereas on Ethereum, you're still restricted by, block size
there's
and
the traffic
transactions.
jam getting into the blocks.
So, that allows for, if a similar thing happened on Ethereum, word to spread faster, people to move assets to hardware wallets and centralized exchanges. Whereas on Solana, it was boom, it happened. So I was like, I risk it, and then I was fine, thankfully.
Yeah, you know what else I saw that was kind of funny was on Twitter. A lot of people were going like, "Oh, I panically checked my wallet on Solana when I heard about this, and I saw, oh shit, it's down 98% or whatever. I got hit." And then it just turns out they're crummy Solana tokens that they had not been hacked. The price had just appreciated that much since the last time they paid attention to them.
That's really funny.
But I've done so little on the Solana network that it's all kind of abstract to me.
Yeah.
But every time I hear about it, I'm only hearing bad things.
Largely, yeah. It's Magic Eden. I think I've heard a lot of positive things, like as a marketplace, as a company.
Oh, and they're coming to Ethereum. They're
coming to ETH
recently.
Yeah, I spoke to.
People are so mad at OpenSea consistently that.
Yeah, it's got to be a good thing. This actually brings it back full circle to the start of this earlier in the podcast, because I spoke to some of the team on Magic Eden a few months ago, and it turned out that one of the founders went to the same primary school as me in Brisbane, Australia. Like, he lives in Silicon. Two years apart. So maybe he's a listener, and maybe he now knows the walk around, and that's the listener that.
I don't remember any of my schools ever having something like that. We would do the Pledge of Allegiance every morning.
You didn't have a walk around. Did you have like houses at school? Like, you'd be
houses.
Yeah,
we had a school, and then most of us lived in houses or apartments, and then we would go to the school.
No, so like, how in Harry Potter there's houses, Gryffindor, Slytherin, stuff like that. Did you have anything like that?
Oh. No, we would do a spirit week where it was like the freshmen versus the sophomores versus the juniors versus the seniors, and you'd all dress in different colors and do games against each other. But we did not have houses.
Yeah, no, we had that in primary school and high school. Maybe it's a British thing that we adopted and then never made it way to America. Right. Yeah.
Well, Harry Potter, that is United Kingdom. I don't want to say British because maybe she's Scottish and I don't know the difference.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, that whole thing is very confusing. You got like United Kingdom, right, and then Britain, and then England, and then there's like,
and then and now it's like some of it's in the EU, some of it's not Ireland, and it's. Should we talk about Moonbirds?
NFTs?
Yeah,
or DeFi. We talk about DeFi too, right?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think if any of that Solana stuff was DeFi related. Maybe the slope finance.
Well, you said it definitely is, because you're saying that it wasn't NFTs weren't affected. It
was
only coins.
True.
Which basically means it was. But anyway.
Anyway.
Oh, actually, there's another good like scandalous story about DeFi and Solana. You heard about the guy who was the dev who pretended to be a bunch of devs?
No, I don't think I've heard this.
Oh wow. I don't know his name, which is unfortunate. But he is a dev who basically made up a bunch of like names or whatever, and then would claim that they were all devs to make it seem like there was more devs working on Solana.
Oh, wow.
And he would have their protocols like interact with each other. So, you make this stable coin with this fake dev, and then you make this thing that uses it as collateral on this protocol or whatever by this other fake dev, and it's all this one guy. And so that way the TVL on Solana would stack up a bunch, even though it's just $1 and these are all not real devs. And then like Yeah, so that came out. He admitted it in an interview, which is weird. And then also now he's going to some other blockchain, and like his plan is to do the same thing. And we all know what blockchain it is.
Wow, that's wild.
I'm surprised you haven't heard about it,
Yeah,
but I guess
I live in the NFT bubble.
you hear about all sorts of stuff I don't hear about. You know?
That's fascinating though. Like I think it's really interesting. It's obviously shady as hell, but cool. Just like
we talk a lot about the sort of positives about the anonymity and the privacy or whatever aspects of it. But obviously there's huge negative ramifications too, where people like this can, like theoretically this wallet address is a person, and because of sort of the ethos of decentralization in crypto, you don't necessarily want to go like, prove to me that you are a separate person and who you are and your government name and all this stuff. So one person can just spoof themselves as a bunch to do this stuff.
Yeah.
We've also heard of a decent amount of, or I have heard of recently a decent amount of ETH NFT projects. I mean, this is something that has gone on for a while probably, but maybe Zach or someone did the digging to find, again, a new project comes out and then they just have a bunch of wallets that they're all controlling to make it seem like there's a lot of action happening in their project post mint.
Yeah,
which is again same sort of thing where it's just a wallet. It can just be
the same person 100 wallets
could be wallets.
The same. I saw a kind of funny thing earlier. Well, it's funny, but it's also not funny. Someone was posting on Twitter about how OpenSea banned their account and a bunch of accounts.
And they're 90
like I haven't.
Yes, I saw that. It was very.
I haven't done anything against the terms and condition. I've got my main account, my vault, and then these 90 burner wallets as well. They all got banned, and it is. And I think more and more people are using burners, which is great. Like it's just for security and like not minting from a wallet that holds your assets is amazing. As well as I think it's becoming a lot easier for people to use bots, and like there's tools out there that you can just use a bot that creates 10 wallets, mint stuff and then sends them all back to the same wallet sort of. Whereas in the past you need to know Solidity to code that. Now I think people have created like no code solutions to do basically just that. So,
and a lot more of that stuff is just going to keep happening, I assume, to where just bits of code get bundled together and abstracted away for everyday users and stuff.
Yeah. The technology is just going to get easier to use and more sophisticated, and it's happening so fast as well, which is kind of cool to see, kind of scary. But I often think about the parallels to like the online poker space back in the day, where we would play online, and then it would be like there was basically no software or tools, and then there was like Poker Tracker and Holder Manager and those kind of things that would track the basic stats, VPIP, and then as time went on, they got more sophisticated. And it took maybe 10, 15. It's still advancing now, but to get to the point where things were like able to solve poker or solve elements of poker and have like
they have real-time solvers now,
there you
where you're just playing, it reads your screen and sees the situation, and like it's crazy.
And it seems like that's similar. Like if we could go back a year in this NFT space, it was like there was basically no analytics tools. You couldn't look at floor depth, you couldn't look at anything really elaborate, and bots were really an outlier. And now it's just like, all right, everyone does it. It's just like you need to do it to be competitive. So shudder to think of where we are in like 3 years. All right, that was some DeFi. That was some Solana.
We got sidetracked though before getting to our other one.
We did. Moonbirds.
The Moonbirds.
Kevin Rose tweeted saying that the entire Moonbirds collection is now CC0 in the public domain. What are your thoughts before I go in?
My thoughts are pretty far ranging, and I read a tweet I think this morning from somebody that kind of just kind of pushed me further along or whatever, and changed them a bit. My first things first, I have no Moonbirds, I have no oddities, I have none of the ecosystem, and I never have. So it's easy for me to just not care as much and not have as strong of a stance. But what I've seen is a lot of people upset about it. Basically, Moonbirds holders not liking it and feeling like they got something taken away from them, which is sort of true, but I feel like much more accurate is that other people just gained the thing that they had. And so it comes off maybe a little bit selfish. But there's also a very reasonable argument to be made that, hey, I bought this thinking that the right situation was this, and now with no communication, all of a sudden you're telling me it's this.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about that. That's a very reasonable reaction to me. But I guess I'll just kind of finish off by saying the thing that I saw this morning was somebody was saying they don't like CC0. And basically what they didn't like about it was that, this is something that's been talked about as sort of a positive, but they were kind of looking at the negative. Anyway, you have your CC0 intellectual property, right? And then anybody can build on top of that. But the stuff that's on top of it is not necessarily inherently CC0.
Correct.
And this person was saying they don't really like the idea that the base layer is open for everybody, but then the people on top are not going to afford that same buildability on top of what they make when the only reason you're able to do this is because of this. So they were basically calling for a rights thing that was basically in perpetuity as much as you branch off. Now, to me, eventually that seems like it's going to be weird shades of gray that court systems are going to have to figure out, like, at what point does it stop being a derivative when it's far enough away? But I could describe that boring math or whatever a little bit more, but I don't want to. So that's sort of what I've thought about it. What about you?
Yeah, that's an interesting point right at the end there. I had heard that before. I think actually when Blitmap came out with their CC0 announcement, I think people were a little bit unhappy or not thrilled with the fact that the derivatives might not be CC0 and it's just like against the ethos. But I think, legally that gets gray and murky and that's sort of another thing. But I think that sort of inherent fact is kind of misunderstood by a lot of people. And a lot of people don't realize that you can build a brand based on your NFT or anyone's. And that brand and thing that you build, you can protect
anyone's if it's in a CC0 project.
You can protect that with the just same amount of trademark and copyright and intellectual property rights as any other piece of intellectual property. It is just that someone can use the underlying art to do whatever they want, basically, unless the thing that they want is in competition or would hurt your IP. So an example is I create I'll get back to my general thoughts in a minute of the whole thing, but let's say I have 9 Moonbirds. I take one of them, I create Zenbirds coffee shop, and I start selling coffee beans with my Moonbird. I get a graphic artist to take my Moonbird, create a logo version of it, stamp it on there, and start distributing it. If someone then comes along and basically takes that same logo and or I think even takes my bird and then creates Zenbirds 2 Nazi coffee brand, that's a common example. People it's going to be that, I think, is in direct competition and in violation of the intellectual property that I had created based on my bird.
Right.
But if they went and said, hey, we're going to sell marijuana or guns and use this bird, that's fine because it's not using the logo and it's not competing against the IP of the coffee brand. So I think it starts to break down into nuance, and I think that's a big issue with this whole thing is that a lot of people just they don't even know what CC0 is or understand it and understand the nuances. And that's one of the sort of the criticisms I have about this announcement. I'm generally happy with it. Again, I'm a Moonbird holder and I'm a big fan of CC0. So I think
You're generally a vocal proponent of CC0
in general. And so my first reaction, I saw the tweet and I was like, I think I was busy with some other things. I was like, I posted a meme gif of someone clapping. I was like, hey, this is amazing. I love it. And then I started seeing other people's thoughts and opinions. And I was like, oh yeah, I totally get people being unhappy about it as well for the same reason you mentioned, where 4 months ago they were promised intellectual property rights. 1 day ago, people may be buying on secondary with that assumption in mind. And then it was, the rug was pulled out from under them, or the wool was whatever, all sorts of textile, which totally is, like you said, very valid, and I think it is right to be upset with that. But yeah, overall, I think I like the move. I think that obviously, ideally, they would have launched with it CC0, and the best time to make that decision was pre-launch. But I think the second best time, if they're convinced of it, is today. The longer they wait is the longer that people would have spent time building up licensing deals or things around their specific thing that may not be as viable if it's CC0. Now, as you said, it doesn't necessarily prevent people from doing any of that. It just means that others can now do it without having to pay for it. And I think the biggest example of that we've seen is Lacoz, who owns the number one rarity bird, tweeted out that he was in talks with some entity for like a 6-figure licensing deal for them to use, and then now that's like fallen through and in jeopardy. And so that just sucks. Like that is awful, and it's like a really shitty thing to happen. So I think he is very rightful to be upset, and it gets tricky when you think of like, does Proof owe any sort of compensation to people in those situations, and what like legal rights do they had to remove these licenses?
Yeah. So you saw the thing in the terms of sale. I was sending it to a lot of people who hadn't bothered to look and see it, but basically there was one thing in their terms of sale that says, and I'm not quoting here, but basically we reserve the right to change portions of all of the above at any time, as long as we basically post here that we're going to do it, or something to that effect. Which included obviously the specific amount of rights or licenses or whatever people had to their individual birds.
Which is, it's really ironic because that's one of the things, people say a reason to go CC0 is so that projects can't just alter the intellectual property rights or the terms and conditions at their will, and Proof basically did that, but did it in a way that now prevents them from ever doing it again. Them or anyone else. Say, the classic example is Disney comes and buys Proof. They can't then now stamp IP rights on those original Moonbirds, or if in theory, maybe they can do some.
Because a judge can rule any way they want to, and then if it's sufficiently wrong, you can try and run it up the chain. Yeah. Eventually, they run into the last one, and then again, the judges can just rule whatever they want to.
We live in a crazy world.
Eventually, you need the people to rise up or whatever, and it's like, we're not going to do that over the marketing rights of Moonbirds. So I guess we lost, but that's all theoretical. Now I want to go back to what you were talking about, where on top of CC0, let's use your same analogy. You're going to make this Zen coffee with your Moonbird. At what point, when you are trying to stop copycat Zen Nazi coffee, are you then infringing on the initial CC0 rights that these people had to build stuff with the Moonbird IP? Because that's also what they're doing, even though there's also they're building it on top of yours. At what point is this being infringed by saying this prevents you from doing this? I don't know. Neither
I have
of
no
us
idea.
know anything about the law.
Honestly, I think
it occurred to me when you were saying that
it's so messy, and I've spoken to a bunch of lawyers, and their answers are always the same. It's like, we don't know. Like, a lot of this is uncharted territory. It needs to.
And there's multiple jurisdictions, obviously. So I'm just going to keep talking, and we can go back and forth. But another thing I heard was that in California, that qualifier on the terms of sale is something that they do not. They're very pro-consumer, relatively speaking, and politically people can disagree with that because of whatever. But in this sense, they're not cool with you doing that. And like a lot of European countries, privacy-wise, are very big on pro-consumer. I don't know if it would apply to something like this, but specifically within the U.S., California does not appreciate terms and conditions that say we can just change these willy-nilly later on, even though this is what you agreed to when you made your interaction with us.
Yeah, it's really complicated and messy at the end of the day, and like no one knows. And I think we're gonna need 4 cases to go to court and have courts rule and create case law and precedent. That's how this stuff works. It's all an experiment, and I think one of the biggest criticisms around CC0 I hear a lot is it sort of disincentivizes people to build out the IP, perhaps, and also makes it more difficult to control the narrative, to control the story. Like Disney, again, very child friendly, family friendly.
Right.
Maybe if it was CC0, then people are creating, for whatever reason, like hate speech or shows that are very violent and off brand. And I get that, and I think that we have no idea. Like we've seen the traditional way work out, where one entity controls the IP and builds out a brand around it. I don't believe we've seen this decentralized CC0 IP from for the most part, CC0 public domain stuff. Again, not an expert, but from what I've read, it's older historical stuff. So the works of William Shakespeare, Sherlock Holmes now, etc. or it's like educational materials, open source software, stuff that people think, all right, anyone should be able to use this. I don't think we've really seen too much in the way of public domain IP for like storytelling and brand building just like released and then have people build off of that and see what happens. And so it's just a fascinating experiment, and it's it's going to be cool to see.
I have two more things to say on this.
I can talk all day. Like I've loved the last 48 hours. I've just been in the Proof Discord chatting about CC0.
Yeah, so I saw somebody on Twitter also mention, regarding the underlying layer is totally open, and then people build stuff on top of it that's not open, and that's okay. They're saying in software, a lot of developers run into that stuff where this is open source, and then you want to kind of build on this, but this is not something that you can do, even though it's built on this. So that was one thing. And then another thing was that I've read, and I feel like this is another thing that hasn't really been challenged much in court, but people still will say to you, when you have these big generative projects, for instance, let's use apes, that are the most famous, right? That because so much of it is done by the computer, Yuga can own the rights to apes, so to speak, but all the individual ones are not copyrightable or trademarkable because there's not like enough of a stamp of human whatever that differentiates them. And one sort of example is just that famous photograph that got taken by a monkey. Took a selfie. Some photographer dropped his camera. The monkey took it. The photographer tried to get a copyright or trademark, I think copyright, on the photograph, and the court said no because you didn't do it. Basically, the device did it, and the device is yours, and you brought the device to this place, but the monkey and the device did it. You had nothing to do with it. And people have said that same logic about how much the human has to be involved in it precludes these big generative projects from being able to have specific claims to specific images from it, even though the overarching thing is something where the IP can be like ownable.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
And so that throws a huge wrench into all these ideas of people wanting to individually monetize their specific profile picture from one of these projects, and then being mad or upset or any which direction about, the caps on it, which is something we saw with like punks, where you could only monetize it for 100,000, to the apes thing, to now Moonbirds going to see. All of that is sort of in jeopardy because it kind of rests on this base layer of is any of this individual pieces like ownable IP or
it's so fascinating and uncharted territory. I don't know if you saw, there was who was it? Maybe Old Navy, the merch brand. They
I did see Old Navy.
They had an ape, and then it turns out that ape, it basically has a copycat. There's another identical ape in the collection where the only difference is the background color. And so then it's just this interesting thing. Like, what if someone then wants to use that same ape? Like, because on the shirt, it doesn't show the background color. It just shows the apes. Then taking that likeness and then doing stuff with it, does that infringe on the IP of et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so I've thought about this there's very similar type thing, but just say I have this ape, somebody else has one where it's the same thing, but with the mouth is open in one of those other different mouth traits. If I'm doing an animated thing with my ape where it's talking, now all of a sudden it opens its mouth. It resembles that one more than it does mine. At what point is this, there's too many of them and they're too close and stuff like that? Again, kind of boils back down to that. Is there enough differentiation and human stamp on these to make them?
Yeah. I want to
and it's all stuff we're going to have to find out over time, and there's going to be...
It's going to be really fun. Well, quote-unquote fun. I find it fun. Yeah.
Fun for some. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting to find out about. It'll be very unfortunate for some people in some cases, I'm sure, or brands or whatever.
On the, like, the whole layer 1 and then building on top of it and having the IP for layer 2, I was in a space this morning. Josh, I forget his surname, starts with a B, and Jimmy Ether came up, and Jimmy is a very vocal opponent of CC0. He's not a big fan, and he sort of mentioned the point about how I think it was mentioned in like one of the Moonbird spaces yesterday, or the Proof Parliament thing, where yes, if the underlying asset is CC0 and you want to build a brand on top of it, you own that brand, but anyone can create that brand. And so if you have an idea, basically the advice is you should just rush out and trademark it, because anyone else can come along. So if like I just said Zenbirds coffee, if someone else comes along and now does it, I no longer have the ability to protect that IP. And so it creates this whole free-for-all rush thing where, again, to an extent, I can understand why the individual holders who may have planned to build a brand about something, around something, but not have protected it, could feel a little put out. But I think that the risk of that happening is pretty minuscule.
Yeah, and one other sort of funny, good/bad argument people are making is just how few people actually were ever intending to put any effort into building a brand around these things is obviously way smaller than the amount that want to theoretically protect that ability and their ability to sell the asset with the hope that the next owner will be able to do that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of expecting of other people to do that, but I'm not actually going to do that myself.
It's one of the other pros that I don't think we've touched on yet is like the idea that by making a body of work CC0 and allowing others to build on top of it, it makes it more likely that the brand is going to proliferate throughout the society, or like through our culture, and that will inherently increase the value of the underlying assets. And again, it's TBD whether like how much that's going to happen, but I think
because we have no evidence basically that
I would say we've seen a couple of examples. Maybe like the Nouns glasses is a good one, where for instance there's an oddity trait
sort of
where those are valued higher because they have the Nouns glasses, and people sort of say, hey, that's cool, and why is this oddity trait worth so much? Oh, because they're the Noggles, the Noun glasses. Oh, what is that? Oh, Nouns, what's that? So I think that there's some inherent awareness, like value to allowing others to sort of build off of the underlying components.
There definitely is a theoretical one, but it's very, to me, very theoretical, and we haven't actually seen any of these IPs proliferate hugely. That is CC0 because of its CC0-ness and people building. It's like this one guy made some luxury Nouns glasses. Let's not act like we have swept the globe with this IP and everybody in the world is building up the brand and the IP of now. Like that has not happened
yet. Imagine if it does. That would be awesome.
But the ability for it to happen exists because of, so it's like there is theoretically this ability, but you know the other side of it is all the IP that has been built that has been owned by an entity before. You know, we have lots of examples of that stuff becoming very famous, and then it only becomes CC0 when the law says it's this IP is so old it's now in the public domain. And then we continue to see stories with Robinhood, for instance, is sort of a popular one that anybody can just make a Robinhood movie. You can just do it whenever you want to. You can just do your own interpretation of it. And it hasn't worked lately, and nobody seems to care about them. But for a while, it was something.
I guess what.
And people will keep trying. I'm sure another movie studio will have one out in the next 10 years. But the last 3 or whatever.
I saw within like 24 hours of the announcement, there was this comic studio that I think had created a bunch of comics. They were like, hey, this is awesome. We're going to release a Moonbirds comic now. And they created some awesome looking cover art. And I think that is sort of like a cool example of what is possible. And like maybe because previously they would probably have had to go to a bunch of birds and say, hey, we'd like to license, or they would have had to buy them or own them. And now they can just go out and create this thing. And, you know, maybe it's a terrible comic, maybe it's awesome. And maybe if it proliferates, that could add value to the Moonbirds that they choose to use, or just probably more likely the brand as a whole. And kind of win-win. Probably. Like, I mean, it seems like a lot of people like that, you just have the flexibility and freedom going, hey, I'm creative. I would love to do something with Moonbirds, but I don't want to go and figure out licensing deals and deal with that. So I'm just going to go out and do something. And
I'm 15 years old. I don't have a lawyer to do that stuff for me. I just want to
meme around,
make this animation using Moonbirds, or just a meme. I was a little more ambitious than you. I had to make some animation.
All right. Well, actually, one more thing came to mind, which is one of the counter arguments is often, well, now someone can go out and create, hate speech or something terrible, alt-right, Nazi thing using your thing.
Mm-hmm.
That could still happen even if you have the IP rights. And it's like the enforceability, of like anonymous on anons on the internet doing that. Like, it's it kind of reminds me of like Beyonce trying to get that photo of hers taken down from the internet that she didn't like, and it's just like,
Does she look like
I think so.
masculine in it or something?
I might be getting, yeah, I believe it was Beyonce, and yeah, it just.
Well, the Pepe guy is a great example too, obviously, right? Because he's sort of, it's sort of within the crypto circle now. Pepe is a whole thing, but there was a very concerted effort. Maybe that's not the right word, but whatever. The image was definitely co-opted by the alt-right for a long time, and the author did not intend it to be that and did not want it to be that, and fought it, and I guess sort of won, but it feels like there was also a cultural thing maybe that happened, and I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to get too confident, but a cultural thing where enough people sort of sided with Matt and sort of retook it from them in a way that just a judge ruling one way or the other doesn't necessarily stop a bunch of internet trolls from using it for that, but enough people, got bored, scared of doing it that way, and enough people respected the original intentions and sort of potential or whatever of Pepe to not be a hate symbol, that have used it for not that it's been kind of reclaimed.
Absolutely. Fascinating stuff.
I think so. News of the week.
Long news of the week. Last time we recorded, we have had a curated drop. Alan Key Ankin is an exploration of otherworldly cityscapes in the visual aesthetic of Fahad's distinct style with pen and paper. The title, translated as Alan's Eyes, alludes to Alan Turing's machine intelligence test, a thought experiment foreshadowing a moment in which we can no longer differentiate between the real and the artificial. Though first proposed in 1950, the topic feels especially relevant today, as even our creative practices are being carried by shifting technological tides. The algorithm and decision-making encoded into this generative art project intentionally imitate Fahad's approach on traditional mediums, composition rules, textures, and overall themes. The visual elements are inspired by Fahad's memories from his nomadic life. You'll find intricate windows from Rajasthan, massive Egyptian pyramids rising from the horizon, a density of civilization only seen in New York, and the moon. A comforting and shared sight, no matter where you stand. I did so well right till the end. Yeah,
you made it so far. I know.
Yeah, so it's cityscapes based on his experiences in life, and also based on sort of his drawings with pen and paper. And I think I find them really interesting. I think, yeah. What do you think of the project? Do you have any? I have one or two.
I don't have any, but I do kind of like them. But it's I don't think I like it as much as you do. One thing is that there's no color in it. It's basically black and white or black and beige are basically the only two options. And so that is sort of an issue with me, where I'm very into color. That's one of the main things I gravitate towards. So that's sort of just gives me one less component to think about. But there is some nice, interesting, evocative art in the project for sure. I have none right now, though. All the new stuff I basically am slow to get these days because I don't mint very much at all. And I like to shop on the secondary with time on my side, to get better prices or to get pieces that I more want to hold for a longer time, or some combination of those two. So I haven't even started shopping for them. But again, every curated project is basically something that I want to have one of. So I'm always planning on collecting the ones, even if I don't get them right away. I'm still looking at like the Running Moon ones as well. I like those as well. And Sudfa is the last three are all ones that I still don't have. But I think
I mean, your approach is very smart. I think, especially given where the market has been lately, like Running Moon and Alan Key, they've both dropped significantly from the mint price, which is sort of, I think we've chatted about it on the podcast about how the market has felt frothy, and a lot of sort of speculators and short-term flippers have been attracted to the Dutch auctions and trying to...
The market, meaning
the art blocks market, although it's cooled off a lot.
Yeah, because it was getting... It has, for sure. But, it was running hot at a time where the overall NFT market was absolutely not. So I just want to be clear.
Yeah, and now it seems like the art blocks market is kind of trending back towards kind of what the overall market is doing, which is sort of being very low volume, bleeding. A few exceptions here and there, but for the most part,
Punks have been doing pretty
Punks
well.
have been holding up,
recently,
and I think going up a little bit. But apes are sort of struggling. Moonbirds have been struggling quite a lot. Everything, like Doodles, Artifact.
What now? Yes. So Moonbirds, I didn't pay a ton of attention to, but I saw various people were being upset in the immediate aftermath. It seemed like the price went down to about 14 or 15, but I don't really know what it was at before.
I think it was around 18 before the announcement, and then it dropped to 15-ish, and now we're back at close to 17. So nothing drastic,
okay, so not
and especially in I guess in step with the whole market. I think apes are like, what are they at, 82 now? You know, they've slowly been dropping from 87 they were hovering at for a while. What did you sell yours at again?
97. The floor was like 92
that's a good
when
sale.
I got 97 at the time.
In retrospect.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And thankfully the F price, which I did not turn into stables or fiat immediately, came down like more than half. It was like 1,700, I think, was the F price at the time. And it got all the way down to like 800.
Now it's back.
Crazy. And
that
was looking bad. But now luckily it's back. I sold a little bit like 4 days ago or something.
It's I just I was looking at Moonbird prices, and I saw the Tiffany thing, which we actually didn't talk about. Maybe it's news of the week worthy, where Tiffany dropped 250 NFTs at 30 ETH each, and they sold out.
Tiffany's the jewelry company.
Tiffany and Co. Yeah, which each NFT is able to, in conjunction with a CryptoPunk, claim a physical pendant of that CryptoPunk, which is kind of cool.
Yep,
I think
it is definitely cool. It seems like you're paying Tiffany's a lot of money for something that you could get done
for a fraction.
At a smaller jeweler. But again, you know, that's how luxury goods work.
Yeah.
You're paying a lot of money for the name.
The name, the brand, the Tiffany's blue, etc., etc. Back to generative art. I think that the market as a whole is bleeding a bit. Running Moon, so it minted out, I think, close to 3 ETH, and it kind of held up for a long time. But last night it was down at...
I'm sorry, like the last time we recorded, or 2 times ago, I think it was 2 times ago, the mint had happened 8 hours earlier or something in that day, and we were both remarking at how it seemed like there was sort of a lot of flippers in it, but they weren't giving up as easily. And then they capitulated like right after we stopped recording or something, and the floor price really did start to fall.
It did, but it still hovered at like the 3-ish mark. Like
it didn't crash.
It didn't crash until, I would say, last night. It was at, I picked one up for 1.25, and I saw a WETH bid hit for like 1 or 1.1, and yeah, again, indicative of the whole market. And I think
I saw that at like 1.4 or 1.5 was sort of the last. Yeah, so I didn't know any were going for like 1 now.
They're back at like 1.8 now, so they've bounced back a bit, but they are beautiful. I really do
think they are beautiful, and the colors are up my alley in a lot of them. Might actually, so I need a couple more loans to get repaid before I can really start shopping.
Yeah, one of the things as well is like I really like. They're a lot nicer once you zoom in and like really blow them up. Again, as opposed to the thumbnails, and that's something that's really like. I think the thumbnails, they look kind of busy, and it's hard to differentiate detail. And if you look at 2 from the same color palette in the thumbnail, they can look very similar. But then once you blow them up and start looking at some of the detail and intricacies, it's just a nice way to appreciate them. You see the lines and the dots and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So just to go back to this, I don't know if this is worth talking about, but on the lending platform NFTFi, where I've done a lot of that, I was generally doing mostly 2 weeks was my traditional loan period, but I've been bumping that up to a month lately, because I just go, you might as well sort of have the interest running for longer, and people want the loans for longer in general. So you're going to get accepted more. And it sort of worked, but now that I'm wanting to shop more often, I just have less unlocking happening, where it seemed like every couple days before I would have 1.5 ETH coming back or whatever to use to bid on stuff. And now I'm just sitting here going, I don't get anything back until the 11th or whatever. But these prices of the new curateds are low enough where once I do get some back, I'll be excited to try and grab one.
Yeah.
Running Moon's probably the top of the list between Sudfa, Running Moon, and then Alan Key Onken. I would say Running Moon is the one I'm most interested in.
I think it's think it's my favorite as well out of the three. Although they're just so different, and I guess it's different times a day.
Yeah.
I appreciate different ones. We should maybe talk about Snowfro, and Snowfro has a drop coming up in a few months, which is crazy.
And I did not hear about this until the pre-show chatter. You told me about it. I hadn't heard about it. So tell me about it.
So it's part of so Bright Moments is a company that sort of is powered by Art Blocks and does a lot of in-person minting experiences. So that they began in Los Angeles, I think Venice Beach area,
Crypto
Venetians, where in order to mint, you had to go in person, and they onboarded a lot of new people to the space. It was a fun experience, and they've sort of grown and expanded from that, where now they're sort of, I think the goal is to go to 10 cities around the world, release 1K citizens in each city, and that's their 10K collection, and do it in collaboration with a lot of generative artists. So the crypto citizens are like these pixelated generative characters, avatars, but at each stop now they're sort of having artists, I think all of them or most of them seem to have released on Art Blocks already, release an edition size of 100 of a new piece of generative artwork. So we've seen all sorts of crazy, cool, interesting stuff come out of this. And
was Ben Kovacs?
I believe Ben Kovac was one of that. Matt De Solorius did Folio, which I think is very interesting and different. I like it a lot. And
it's like ASCII art, right?
Yeah, it is. And Snowfro, Eric is doing one in Mexico City, which is coming up mid-November, I think. And so he released Chromie Squiggles, a 10K collection, and then, as far as I'm aware, did not release any new generative art up until now. And so,
not that I know of.
It's kind of wild.
And I feel like we would know.
I feel like we would. It's just kind of a shame on us if we're missing something here.
Yeah. He has a huge playground drop that I can't remember right now.
Yeah. So I think that's newsworthy and exciting. And
but we have no idea what it looks like.
I have no idea. It might be out there, but I haven't seen it. It's kind of far out still, a few months away. So maybe nothing's been shared. Yeah, the amount of like just anticipation. I think it's kind of crazy and kind of like. It's got to be nerve-wracking for him, who released a collection that's so popular,
right,
and now is releasing a much smaller size collection. And just, I think expectations are going to be kind of through the roof, kind of like with Incomplete Control with Tyler Hobbs after Fidenza, which those, by the way, have really grown on me over time as I've learned they're meant to be appreciated in real life and less so just on your computer and hearing more about it. But yeah, I think it's exciting. I can't wait to see what it's like, basically.
Where did you see them in real life?
I have not seen them in real life. I just heard that you need to.
Okay.
And then I've seen some photos of them in real life, and I was like, yeah.
So on that note, we also have an upcoming drop from Tyler Hobbs that is sort of a collaborative effort with Dandelion, who has a very great Art Blocks collection, which I realized maybe 2 months ago or so when I was bidding on Subscapes and...
like a personal collection, not he has released a generative art. Yeah, he's got one of the best. It's
amazing,
incredible.
How much do you...
I was just going to say, he was one of the first guests on After Dinner Mints, and he showed off his collection, and it was just jaw-dropping back then.
I didn't really appreciate it until I was trying to collect these pieces, and so many of the ones that I thought were really great, I was like, wow, he's got another one. But anyway... How much do you know about this project? What do you want to say?
I don't know a ton other than it is, I think, in conjunction or collaboration with Archipelago.art, which is this new marketplace.
Okay, I vaguely remember seeing that now that you say that. Yeah, but that was not any of the thing that stuck out to me.
All right, what do you know?
So as far as the art is concerned, the only thing I think I can say is that it appears to be a circle packing algorithm. Is the underlying thing at the base, and the previews look good and interesting. Tower's great, but anyway, one of the things is that ahead of minting, so let me just back one more step. There's going to be 1,000 of them, and it's going to be like an auction to bid for the mint passes for it or something like that. But then everybody can explore the algorithm any way they want, and you get to basically, pick ahead of time or whatever what your seed freight random seed is into it to basically get the output you want. So the rarenesses basically will end up being just totally picked by people and totally curated by people, and the actual like inherent rarenesses or whatever of all the different traits and stuff like that are largely irrelevant because people get to go through as much as they want before they actually mint and pick the outcomes that they want. So it's like it's a collaborative effort between the
Super
owners,
interesting.
the minters. Yeah, really interesting. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, my personal tastes and then compare that to what the market overall mints. That'll just be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website now. It's qql.art, and yeah, it's exactly as you said. That's the process. It's coming up in September next month. There's 999 mint passes. 900 of them will be auctioned on Archipelago, and I guess the 99 are reserved for giveaways, collabs, Tyler and Dandelion and other things.
What do you think one of those mint passes will go for? Because I'd be interested in trying to get one. So let's frame of reference. His incomplete control drop. There was 100 of them. Is that accurate? 100 of them, and they went for like 40 or something like that. Right?
They went for like 40, but they very quickly ran up to like 100 ETH, and then the floor of that collection is I think 160 now.
That's crazy. In a very simple version of it, if we take 40 and then we were to multiply it by 10 because the supply is 10 times bigger, that would be 4. Or if we took the price 160 that they went to, divided that by 10, that would give you a price of 16. So right now, the easiest guess would be somewhere in the 4 to 16.
I was going to say 10 ETH. Like that would have been my guess. In Fidenza has a floor of 100 ETH, and that's exactly the same size, 999. But Fidenza is Fidenza, and you know,
Fidenza is Fidenza. And it'll be interesting to see how much people like versus dislike whatever the mechanism of being able to interact with the algorithm ahead of time and sort of curate for yourself.
Yeah,
I think it's super interesting, but it on some level, when you are buying art from Tyler Hobbs, it would be best in a sense to have all of that art be sort of under Tyler Hobbs's artistic purview. Whereas when you go, I'm now going to be 50% in charge of this, the work of art, in theory, it's now a collaborative effort between Tyler Hobbs, who we all agree is great at art, and the market agrees is great at art, and ourselves, who the market does not agree. You know, there's something interesting about like taking that power away from somebody who's obviously so good at it and giving it to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will sort of reflect in the price, where it's not going to be Fidenza levels. It will, at least to begin with.
But also like the best collectors, like maybe Rudy Adler's will be like, oh my, like, you know, we respect some of these collectors in addition to these artists. And if the collectors have really good taste and now they get to really scour, like, was it 0x Techno that did the big thing with the out of
band screens? I think so.
Yes. So just that kind of idea, and people will be able to get, if you have a mint pass, you can get people to now get me one of these out of band or whatever, out of bounds ones, and then I'll actually make it, and it'll be an actual legitimate minted one that I picked, that I've sort of curated.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of interesting possibilities.
And I also mentioned on the website, the mint passes never expire. So the dynamic, it's fascinating. It's going to be really cool to watch. Something to keep your eye on. We'll definitely cover it more as time goes on. And I would love to get one. We'll see.
I also like how, I don't know, the idea of a circle packing algorithm is sort of a fundamental and I would say simple generative art algorithm, but if you have the right artistic sensibilities, you can make really beautiful looking stuff, and obviously Tyler does, and now he's doing that with it's just a bunch of circles of different sizes and colors crammed in at varying densities. You know what I mean? Like, it's simple,
but that's the beauty of it. All right, I think we've covered a lot in News of the Week. We covered a lot in generative art.
Yeah, we're coming up on an hour, which is sort of a nice.
Should we play a game? And this is the 50th episode. I said I was going to give something away. I decided I would give away a art blocks piece, a Two Mathematicians, which is something I personally love. I have 23 of them, which I didn't realize until I looked just before the recording. But I'll pick one, and we'll give it away. And in order to be eligible, you will have to enter the word that we come up with in playing the game. What am I thinking? How's that?
Okay. Should I give away an Event Horizon Sunset
Bam,
as well?
let's do it.
All right, so we got 2 pieces going away. We have to somehow differentiate who gets.
Yeah, well, do we want to give two different winners then?
Yeah, I think that's better than doubling up.
Okay, so then let's. I guess we'll have people enter by commenting on the YouTube video, and then.
Now, people were saying though, if they left their F address, it seemed like YouTube was censoring.
Yeah,
because,
so maybe we won't have people. We'll either have a Google form, old school style, or we'll just have people comment
in
without the F address and then randomize.
Oh, okay. I was going to say in the Two Bored Apes channel in the Discord server, but I guess not everybody has access to it if they didn't get the
I think YouTube's simpler. Let's we'll have exact details in the show notes, but probably either a Google form but you will need to know the word that we come up with to enter this, and it'll probably be a raffle and 2 people will win, and
Okay. And we're doing What Am I Thinking?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Let's look at our desks and see the same things as usual, and then think outside that. I got one.
I got one.
3, 2,
watering
1,
can.
Tomato.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Pretty fucking close here.
I feel like I got
one. 3, 2, 1. Garden.
Ooh,
Close enough, I think, right?
Yeah.
What's between those? Come on.
Garden.
A gardener, by the way, I think would be the answer.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Should we just say gardener is the answer then, rather than
gardener will be the official answer. Sure.
Okay. Cool. That was, I think, our shortest one. Maybe we've done that.
Now, where did you get watering can from? Because I've been harvesting so many tomatoes lately.
I looked outside my window, and there's a watering can on the balcony from back when I used to be a gardener.
Tomatoes are on my brain because of how well they've been doing this year.
Yeah.
Best year ever of tomatoes in my garden, for sure. It's crazy.
That's awesome. You made some really delicious-looking tomato sauce.
I made that, and I've been giving away a ton, and I had a BLT, and I got a bunch more for a salad later today.
All right.
This is the end of the episode. Thanks for listening.
Tell a friend. We like you. We love you. We love you for listening. Thank you so much.